Good morning. And we usually say in our Hindi language, namaste. We put our hands together and say namaste. That's one formal way of greeting. My name is Ralph Rampersad. I'm originally from the Caribbean, Trinidad, island of Trinidad and Tobago. So I want to share with you a little story of my life and the life of my great-grandparents and grandparents in the islands of Trinidad. And that came about because of migration from India to the Caribbean. India was ruled by England, the British. The British was the most powerful nation in the world. They held countries all over the world, took states, islands, countries. On the east, Philippines, Guadalcanal, and on the west side, the Caribbean, mostly the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Grenada, and Belize, British Honduras, and there's a South American country formerly known as British Guyana, is now Guyana. And they had, on those islands and countries, they had plantations, sugar plantations, rice plantations, cocoa plantations. And they had Africans working for them because they brought a lot of African labor to the islands and to the other countries. But what happened is that the Africans were not really top priority in agriculture. As the British ruled India, they were very, very strong and tough people. And they were very, very, I like to find a word to say they were very rude and disrespectful to the East Indian population. So what happened at that time period, they went to the villages. And in the villages, of course, in each little village, there was always someone head of the village. And they will go to them and, pay them off little or nothing with the hope that they can enslave people, man, woman, and children, not so much children, but mostly the men, young men. And the leaders of the villages took the money, and they gathered up and grouped up hundreds and hundreds of thousands of young people, and they were shackled and put into holding cells either in Lucknow, Bombay, Calcutta, and they were told that they were going to a new life in the Caribbean, a better life in the Caribbean. There'll be no poverty. Little did they know what they were going into. And they loaded up into ships, sail ships, and send them over. Crossed them over the Indian Ocean, crossed them over the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Ocean. And the Indians didn't know the names of those oceans, and they called it Kala Pani, which means Kala means the dark ocean. But in the group of people who went to the Caribbean, there were a lot of Hindus. And the Hindus are very quiet and not timid people. And there were some Muslims that were a large number of Muslims who went there. The British on the ships treated the Hindus very, very different to the Muslims. They ill-treated the Muslims. So one of the stories that I heard from my grandparents and sometimes from my great-grandmother, fortunately, she was alive when I was a kid. They will talk in Hindi, and because they could not speak English in the Caribbean. The Muslims will beg or ask the Hindus, we want to change our names to have names like you, so we'll be treated much better. And they did, because they all came from the same village. And they traded names, and they exchanged names, and they went to so the ships took them to Jamaica, to Trinidad and Tobago. They took them to Guyana, British Guyana, and they offloaded them, hundreds of thousands. And that went on for a long period of time, from the 1600 all the way up to the 1800s. And the only difference between the East Indians and the Africans, the white plantation owners offered them nothing. But when the East Indians came, they brought them basically as slave laborers. But the only good thing about that part was that they offered them property. They gave them signed contracts, but they had to sign the contracts to work there. But they gave them rules and regulations that they could not break, because if they did break it, they were punished severely punished. So when they gave them those contracts, those who work for 5 years, they will be given acreage of land or property to take ownership. Those who work for 10 years will get a larger portion. Hence the reason now in Trinidad and Guyana, most of the Indians have a lot of properties. So they work the farms and they work their cane fields and they work their cocoa fields and they also work the rice paddies. And they work early morning from 3 in the morning to 11 at night, and they could not complain because they were punished. But they had to do it because they had nowhere to go. Some of the things that the British did not allow them to do was to gather and congregate like we. God bless America, we could congregate and talk and speak and do things together. In order for them to perform their services, because they took with them their culture, they took with them their religion, and a lot of things that they used to do in their hometown in India. In order to perform those things, they had to go to in the middle of the night to the forest with the hope that the British won't find them. And they will perform local services and or sing or talk and, you know. With regards to housing, they built a wooden housing, barracks that we call them. I was fortunate as I was growing up as a kid that my grandmother family lived on one of the plantations. And when I visited them in the country, I had the opportunity then as a kid. I had no choice to sleep in one of those barracks. There were 10 or 12 communal barracks, like 2 or 3 families will stay in wooden barracks. They had outhouses and just one container that they collected water and spoutings that will fall when rain comes, and they always pray for rain season. And they had one standpipe sometimes way in the middle of the district, so they will all go and stand with buckets of water. But they survived. They survived, and at the end of their term, they inherited properties, and they too became plantation owners, and they too continued the sugarcane industry, the cocoa industry, the rice, and the agriculture.
I'm afraid that's all the time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Brown.